Welcome back to another video. Today we're covering Google Forms. Now Google Forms is a multi-purpose use software that also happens to be pretty good for doing assessments within Google Classroom. And that's what I'm going to show you how to do. So let's click here. And as you can see, this is the Google Forms homepage. And the way I got there is if you are signed into your Google account, you can just click on your Google Apps. And if it doesn't show up on the first page of apps, here it is. You can move it up. Now, since we're using this for the purpose of making quizzes, I'm going to recommend that you always do it from within Google Classroom. And that's because, let's say, for example, I click here to create a new form. This form can be used for surveys, which is mostly what Google Form is used for. And so by default, this is not set up to work with your classroom and it's not created as a quiz. For that, we would need to go into the settings tab. So let's go there now. And you see you have some options here. You have 3 tabs here. The first one would be general. Here there's a checkbox asking if you would like to collect email addresses, which will do that by default if you click that. Here's an option to only allow users within your organization to answer this, and whether it would require a sign-in, and whether they can edit after they submit the survey or see a response after they complete it. Let's head over to the presentation tab, and this will allow you to add a progress bar and shuffle the question order. And then quizzes, which was added to allow these forms to also function in conjunction with Google Classroom. So for example, as you can see, it would assign point values to the questions and allow auto grading. Now I'm going to mention before I click this that the auto grading, as you can imagine, only applies to true and false questions or multiple choice. Keep in mind that if you do create a quiz that has a combination of those type of responses, that the short and medium responses would have to be reviewed by you before giving the actual grade. So this would be more useful for exams that only had a specific type of answer. So if I click on this, you see some options here, like allowing the student to see their grade immediately after each submission. So for example, if you're doing a strictly multiple choice test, you can add an answer key to the form so that it grades it automatically as soon as the student finally submits the test. And here are some other things here. Whether the student can see their missed questions, what the correct answers were, and the point values. So given everything I just said, it is easiest to create the quiz from within Google Classroom. So we're going to head there now. I'll discuss how some of these are made in just a second. So we're going to go over to Google Classroom and we're going to create a sample quiz. So we are in the classwork tab from within Google Classroom. We're going to click on create and quiz assignment. This is the easiest way to make it. And the reason I say that is because it's already integrated with Google Classroom, and by default, Google Classroom has already done a lot of the things that you would need to make something a quiz. So for example, Classroom can import the grades for your assignments. It'll automatically limit the responses to 1 per user, and it will collect their email address. And it restricts responses to only users within your domain. So let's create a sample test. And then, as you can see, as soon as I created that assignment, the quiz assignment, it has already embedded a Google form. So what we can do to edit this form, we just click on it. And as you can see, it has already named it blank quiz, which we can change the name of. And we're going to do a sample question just so you can kind of get an idea of how you would set things up here. Later in the video, I will show you every single option that is available to you. But in terms of how to create a question and doing an answer key, here's how it's done. So here you see things are very modular here. That means is every question is separated into its own box. And as you can see, there are some interface things that we can interact with here. The first is always the question. So we can start typing our question, and Google is doing some computer learning there in the background, some artificial intelligence to basically generate what kind of answers you might want to have in there. And so the second I typed in this question, it is giving me suggestions here on the bottom. Do I want to add all of them? If I just want to add one or the other? And so, for example, I can click yes. And as you can see, option 1 has been populated with yes. If I want to add no, I just click that. So basically, they're cutting down on a lot of the extra typing you would have to do in forming these questions. Now, obviously, this is a very simple question, but obviously in your situation, you may have to type out a number of the things. But this just kind of gives you an idea how it would work with for multiple choice. So for example, in this situation, I want to add the answer key. So in this answer key, I'm going to dictate how many points I think this is worth. So this is a very simple quiz. So this one is worth 100 points. And I'm going to select my answer here. See, it says choose the correct answer. I'm going to hit done. And there, I have marked this with an answer key, and I've given Google the correct answer that I am expecting. Some other important things to know while we're still on this page. We have some other interface things that we can interact with. So for example, we have an option to duplicate this question. So Google has really made an effort to try to minimize the tediousness of creating these quizzes. So if I wanted to duplicate this, and let's say it was also a yes or no question and I just wanted to change that up, then I can do that. And I would be able to switch the order of these questions as well. On the bottom, you have a little trash can. So if you want to get rid of this question altogether, you can do that as well. And then the next one is perhaps one of the most important. It's the required button. This makes it so that they cannot submit this quiz unless this question has been answered. You would want to do that with pretty much all of your questions, unless it's like a bonus question that is like an optional question. I'd say for the most part, you want to have this turned on. And what it'll do, it'll add a red asterisk, and it'll let the student know that they must answer that question. Additionally, to avoid some other tediousness, let's say you were using some questions from another form, you also have the option to import questions here. As far as the other interface things here, we can add a title and a description. We can add an image. We can add a video. And I'm going to show you that in a different form. But for now, this is all for our quiz. We've told it the right answer. And now we can close out of here. And now you can see that we still have this blank quiz embedded here. The quiz was already 100 points, and I'm ready to send this out to students. I won't add a due date or a topic. This is just a test, and I have grade importing. So I'll show you what that looks like in a second. So I'm going to hit assign. And then what I'll do is sign out and sign back in as the student, just so I can show you what that looks like on their end. So let's sign out. We'll sign in as a student. And then we could take a look at what that looks like. I'm going to go into my classroom, into classwork, and I see quiz right here. So I just click on the quiz, and I'll click on that to complete it. And so, for example, as you can see here, my email has already been recorded. So when I submit this, the teacher will automatically see the email that's associated with it. As a rule of thumb, you still want to add a name box over on your forms, just so that you can clearly see the name. But this is just like advice here. When you create a quiz, it will record their email. So if you didn't want to use the name thing, you can do that as well. So as a student, this is all I see. The question, and I'm going to answer this correctly. There's only one correct answer here. And I'm going to hit submit. And so it's been submitted, and it's going to mark my assignment as done. Since I've enabled the ability for the student to see their score, I'm going to click here and view my score. So here I can see that it indeed showed that I selected the correct answer, and I have been given 100 for this. So I'm going to close out of here. And I want to show you what this looks like from the teacher perspective. So I'm going to sign out of being a student again. I'll sign back in as a teacher. I'll enter my classroom. And then I can go to the grades tab. So if I go to the grades tab, I can see that I created a quiz here. And I can see that one student has turned it in. And I can see that person's name is sample student. So by default, even though the quiz graded itself and the student knows what they got on the quiz, that isn't in your Google Classroom yet. But that's why it's handy to have that toggle on for import grades, because now what you can do is you just click import grades. And it says, are you sure you want to import grades from the egg quiz? Importing the grades will overwrite the current grades in Classroom. And I hit import. And so, for example, here, see, it imported the grade, and there's no real reviewing that needs to be done on your end because you already know all the right answers. But say, for example, you did want to review this, we can actually go back. Let's go back to the form that we created. Let's go back. And you can see here, we're back on the home screen for the quiz that we created. And as you can see, one response has been submitted. So we can actually go to the responses tab and we can see what the response was. Now, by default, you're presented a summary to kind of give you an idea how the whole class did. However, you also have the option to view by question to see how the students did per question. In addition, you can view the individual response. This is why it's useful that it captured the email, because now I can view the results of this one person, and then I would click this drop down, of course, to view the other emails of the other students. So that's how you would see that. And though I didn't, hold on a second, it's still there as a draft. I have not returned the grade to them yet. So I would just hit return on that. And then the student will be notified of the grade that I left. And they will be able to see this grade now that I return it. So hit return. And so that would be the process of creating a quiz and having Google Forms grade it on its own. And then you just basically importing the grades from Forms and submitting it back to the student. Now, the form that I did was fairly simplistic. And as I did mention, these forms perform best for pretty simple tests that have multiple choice. Now, multiple choice is only, and true and false are really only necessary for the self-grading capability. But I want to show you a form from Ms. Angracina, who helped collaborate with me on this video. On one of the other Google Classroom videos, I showed this briefly, but I can show you an example of how she did it. So obviously you fill out the title and the description, and she's asking for the full name there. That works well in conjunction with collecting the email, which is done by default. And here you see we have a bunch of short answer questions. So they don't have to be multiple choice. If I scroll all the way down to the bottom, she makes great use of one of the features called file upload. And basically what that allows you to do as a teacher is collect written responses like on paper or whichever format the student decides to hand it in, they can hand in a scrap sheet of the work that they did. So for example, here she's asking them to upload a loose leaf to show their work for each problem on the homework assignment. So this is a great way to mix in the online aspect and the in real life aspect of test taking. If it requires something like math where you have to show your work, this is pretty handy because they can just upload an image of their work or several document files. So that's a pretty cool way to use it there. Now, this test or this homework assignment is mostly short answer, but actually let me show you an example of all the different question types. So if we go back, here is laid out all the different types. So I'm going to scroll down through these and kind of give you an idea of what each of them are for. So you have your name and your date. You can enter time. This one would be considered a drop-down where you add a variety of options and then they just select from a drop-down. This is the multiple choice that you've seen before. And as you can see, all of these are required. This is the red asterisk I was talking about. So like, for example, with something like this, this is the checkbox. If I deselect that, you see it lets me know this is a required question. I would not be permitted to submit that unless I had some kind of answer there. Here we see short answer. Here we see a multiple choice grid. This is a checkbox grid. Here, she just attached an image and then gave a description. But this kind of gives you an idea of the flexibility you can do here. They don't all have to be multiple choice. That just makes it the easiest way to grade it. But you can get pretty creative with here. Here you have a linear scale. Here you have another short answer, but you have an image embedded in it. So basically the question would be like regarding the actual image itself. And here we have file upload again. And with that, I just want to reiterate that, let's go over to the quiz again. I just want to reiterate that all of those options that you just saw are available through this drop down here. I covered all the drop downs here, so feel free to use this video as a reference next time you want to make a quiz, and then maybe you can get inspired by one of these to create something for your class. You would just click here, add question, and then select from one of these, and then fill out the necessary answers. Well, so that's it for this video. I hope you found this useful. I'll see you on the next one.